All right, yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the presidency a little more, but before then, um, in the spirit of learning how to learn rather than what to learn, okay, what I would suggest for all of my students is to, I don't know if books have fallen away as far as popularity goes. When I was, going to undergrad, we didn't, computers existed obviously, and the internet existed. I mean, in about 95, Windows 95 came out, the internet started to pick up, but people still bought books. And so a lot of our resources, most of our resources were still books. Scholars today still use a lot of books, but we use a lot of online journal articles and stuff for research. But there are certain gems out there that, everybody should read, be aware of, so that you kind of get an understanding of the world around you, okay? And what we're fighting for. Now, if you don't know there's a fight, okay? If you pay attention to politics, it's a very dirty game, and a lot of emotions are involved. If you recall the last presidency of Donald Trump, there's great efforts to make you hate him, and there's great efforts to protect or even hate Joe Biden. Depends on what side you're on, okay? Joe Biden falls up the stairs to Air Force One, the news doesn't say a thing about it. Conservatives are like, why aren't they saying anything about it, right? If that was Trump, they'd be like, he's got some neurological disorder, he was drunk, I don't know, but it's not out of an abundance of concern for Donald Trump, it's because they hate him so bad. And it's not out of an abundance of love for Biden, it's just they don't want him to look bad, right? Because you don't want to, when the media, when the majority of those in media are on Biden's side, you don't want your guy looking bad because you want him to get done what you want to get done, right? It's all about power. Politics is about power, all right? If it wasn't about power, we wouldn't vote for people. It's about, getting your way when you can't convince people, all right? Getting policies. Well, anyway, so when we talk about, learning, certain issues and their importance, what we're fighting about, I want to introduce you to certain people who I believe you should be aware of, okay? Their ideas. Because their ideas are so either influential or just good. Influential does not mean good, okay? You hope that it's good. But, Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Who's Karl Marx? Marxism. Have you heard of Marxism? Okay. What is Marxism? It's from where we get communism. Okay. For the history of mankind, we've been asking, what is the ideal society? How should we run our lives? What is government for? Are we, in America, we talk about these principles of liberty, right? But whenever the government provides you something, the government governs it. And whenever the government governs something, it takes away your liberty. You have to give up a piece of your liberty to get something from the government. If you're going to receive health care from the government's going to tell you how to get your health care. You receive school from the government's going to tell you what education you get, what you don't get, who you get, where you get it, okay? You've lost your liberty of making your choices of where you go to school, what you learn, who you learn under, once the government does it. So when there's this battle over private education versus public education, okay? The Marxists believe that the government should provide all, okay? Cradle to grave, that the government is there to provide and protect, okay? They call it the nanny state, where you're the government's child, essentially, but you don't make the decisions. The government makes the decisions on where you go to school, where you live, when you work, where you work, okay? If you go to school, okay? They'll tell you, because, in a free society, I could fail out of school as many times as I want. And then I get as many chances as I can pay for. If I'm willing to pay for it, I can keep going to school. And of course, businesses, if schools are businesses, and they're free to choose whether or not they want to educate me. Okay, they can say no. Harvard can say no. If that makes sense. Okay? So Marxism obviously is a way people, believe that they believe it's equitable. They believe it's a good thing that, because clearly the government should provide for everybody and take care of everybody. And if the government provides everybody health care, then nobody will go without health care, right? We'll all get the same amount of health care. That doesn't mean we'll all get the best health care, because when the government gives you something, the government has no interest in making a profit, does it? And when there's no interest in making a profit, there's no interest in innovation. If you make no profit for what you do, did we go through this whole thing where I said everybody gets a C in here? I said everybody in here gets a C. What does that do to the A students? See, the F students are like, yeah, I'll go with that. I get a C because I was going to get an F anyway. I want to get a try. If I was lucky, I wouldn't even have to cheat. I'll just get a C, right? What does that do to the A students?
They stop trying.
They stop trying. You stop getting excellence. So what happens to medicine if, you get rid of incentive to make a profit off of your skills, off of your effort, off of, all of your ingenuity? You stop using it, right? What happens to the pharmaceutical companies who cannot make a profit off of making medicine? They stop looking for new medicines. What happens to the factory, or the inventor for that matter, who can no longer profit off of his ingenuity, off of his inventions? He stops doing what? Inventing. Progress comes to a halt. And so, we'll talk about how that happened. Now, is that just a theory? Or is that reality? Well, if we look at communism as it was implemented in the USSR, okay, the Soviet Socialist Republic, key emphasis on socialist, because that word socialist gets thrown around a lot. And remember, this is Marxism. Socialism is Marxism, okay? Right now, there is a fear. Now, this is from a news group called the Epoch Times. It's a conservative group, so it's biased. But they wrote a whole book called "The Specter of Communism is Ruling Our World," okay? With the fear that there are those out there still trying to implement, and successfully doing so, communistic ideas, okay? Now, I just got this book, it was sent to me, I haven't read it yet, but why is this important? Well, because if this is true, we can look to the past of what happens in a communistic regime. Gulag is the system of prison camps throughout the USSR. They still exist. Prison camps still exist in China and North Korea and Venezuela, all the places where communism has been implemented around the world. Cuba. And in the USSR, after the USSR fell, there were people who actually chronicled what went on there. And this small book, this is a Pulitzer Prize winning book by Anne Applebaum, and she just chronicles what went on during this time. These internment camps, they were forced labor camps. So what they would do is, these prisoners they were charged, often turned in by their neighbors, by their children, for crimes against the state. About 25% of the USSR spent time in a gulag. That's 1 out of 4 people. And their trials lasted maybe a minute. So they'd come in a door, What's your crime? You've been called this. You have a defense. We don't like it. Get out of here. You're going to the Gulag. You're going to Siberia or archipelagos. And these remote, cold, desolate areas where they would, they were called to, the doctors there were not doctors. They'd take a guy, what do you do there, Shannon Holzer? That'd be me. Oh, I'm a, college professor. Okay, you need to go work in the infirmary, take care of the people who cut their arms off. I don't know anything about medicine. I don't care. And you're in there like, oh, what do I do now? And it talks about just the rapes going on, the beatings, the children, women having children in there, and it was just horrid. I mean, when I got to the section on children, I was like, I can't read anymore. The babies, what they did, the babies stopped crying. They realized the lady gets to the nursery and realizes the babies were not crying. Why aren't the babies crying?
They're dead.
Huh?
They're dead?
No, they're alive, in some sense. They realize they wouldn't get them anything. They're starving because they're not getting any food, but they realize that crying doesn't get them any food. And so they just stop crying, and then they just die, of course. And so it's I was like, I can't read this anymore. This is horrible.
I think I was over some women suffocate their babies.
Well, that would have been they suffocate their babies. Like you hear the stories of the Jews hiding in Germany where, and they're in the attic and the baby's crying and you can't get the baby to stop crying and the Germans are at the door. So the woman's, trying to get her baby to stop crying, so she smothers the baby so it can't be heard. The baby dies, and it's tragic. In this case, the women are separated from their children. The children are ignored by and large by the people taking care of them because the guards don't care about these children, and then, and they just die. Okay. And the treatment of the humans in these conditions. And of course, why are they treated this way? Well, because they're enemies of the state. When they're enemies of the state, they're worse than human. I mean, worse than animals. So, and you get this sense of what's going on right now, what's called the cancel culture, where people are arguing that if you disagree with me politically, you don't deserve to have a job. And if you don't have, what you're saying is this person doesn't deserve to have a job. What you're saying is this person shouldn't have money to eat. You're really saying this is an animal and should be treated as such. Okay. So we're just a 1 to 2 steps away from setting up camps to put political prisoners in right now of the people with whom we disagree. Now, you go talk to people, go talk to your friends and talk to the ones who hate not George Bush. I talked to people back then, Donald Trump, say what should be done with Donald Trump? And you say you should be in jail. You go, for what? Right? And there are all sorts of alleged crimes and stuff. And then you ask, well, what if somebody just put a bullet in his head? Well, a lot of, Johnny Depp said, he thought, thinks it'd be a good thing to assassinate Donald Trump, right? Madonna says she wants to blow up the White House. So you see the vitriol here going on. This kind of stuff that takes place in communist countries where you put your political enemies behind bars, you kill them, you wrangle up their supporters, and you put them in gulags. And so it's very important that we be aware of a type of government system that people are pushing for, okay, and the result of that. There has been no socialist system, a real socialist system, that has not resulted in this, okay? And we're talking in the tens of millions of people who died, more so than in Germany, in Nazi Germany. The communism has killed far more people than Nazi Germany ever killed, okay? Why is communism, why is that not brought up? Why is it when you bring up Stalin, why is Stalin not on the same level as Hitler? Unfortunately, because many of those people teaching history agree with him, agree with Stalin, okay? So Anne Applebaum's book on Gulag, the Gulag system, I think is a great read, even if you somehow got the Cliff Notes version, which there is not one, okay? But if you had this on your shelf and you read about it, and you'd understand, the price of certain things, to understand the goals of communism, okay? To read the Communist Manifesto. It's a short 30-something page pamphlet at that, and it talks about the need for revolution. So when you hear people like Bernie Sanders talking about revolution, you need to take that seriously. When they talk about the rich, okay, meaning they need to cut down the trees to make sure they're all even rather than build up, you know. So the idea is that they need to cut down to make even, you don't build up. And so Bernie Sanders does not like those who have more, all right? Somehow that's an evil thing to them. Another thing, we talk about oil and stuff like this in world events and things going on around our world. This is an excellent book, and it's by Daniel Yergin. It's called The Prize, and it's the history of oil. Okay? It's a big book, huh? But a lot of people talk about oil and how evil oil is, how fossil fuels are bad. Part of the geopolitical problems that go on with oil are there for a reason. Because of where we get oil, politics surrounding how we get oil. Can we drill, in the Alaska, reserves, otherwise known as ANWR? I think it's the Alaska National Wildlife Reserve, ANWR. I think that's what it stands for. There's been this idea that, we can't drill for oil up there even though there's a lot of oil. What happens if we drill for oil in America? We have it. We don't have to go to where? The places like Saudi Arabia and Iraq and the Middle East. Do they like us in the Middle East?
No.
Not really.
What?
I guess not. Oh, not really.
No, they don't. They generally don't. They like our money because we're spending it, okay? There's a lot of control you can influence over a major nation if you have the very lifeblood of their economy. None of us got here today on solar power or wind power. We didn't sail to school, okay? As much as we would like to, renewables may be a thing of the future, but as of right now, they are very much the present. It's very important that you know the history of oil and how we got here, because if you know that, you go, okay, now I could more intellectually discuss the issues concerning it, because some people will be like, well, it's just these big multinational or these, companies, and they're evil, and are they evil? How many people, especially this city, are employed by the oil industry? And how many of you would be able to even go to school here? This school wouldn't exist if it wasn't for oil, by the way. Because it takes money to build schools, and the money that was raised for this school comes from a particular industry. The industry that supports Houston is oil. So, but okay, I'll give you a cheat on this. Okay, I'm going to cheat. There's actually I think it's 10 to 13 video series on YouTube you could watch called The Prize. And it's highly entertaining, extremely informative, and it is so cool, okay? Oil used to come from where? Where? Whales. They used to get, why did they, and this is before cars, why did they want oil? It's prior to electricity. They needed it for lamps, to heat their homes or to light their homes especially. They had oil lamps, they lit their homes with it, okay? And so what they did, eventually they found fossil fuel, and they had to refine it so that they could make oil lamp oil for it. And they had this byproduct, right? It was a solvent called gasoline. And that was the byproduct, that was the waste, okay? And then eventually somebody creates a combustible engine that combusts solvents, a fuel. And they use gasoline to combust. Combustion means explosion, right? You have a piston, pressurizes a chamber. It's injected with fluid, gas. They put a spark in there, it explodes, it pushes the piston up. Another one goes down, goes up, down, it keeps exploding both ways. Turns a crankshaft. The wheels, then you get, it's called flywheel, then you get a tire that gets moved, and now you got an auto self-movement. Okay? Now there's a need for gasoline, and so they're now refining oil for gasoline so cars can move. And once Henry Ford created not the automobile but the assembly line, he was able to put a car in all over America. And now all these people had cars. And once people had cars, there was a greater demand for oil. And once there was a greater demand for oil, they started looking all over the globe for oil. In the Middle East, they didn't understand this need yet. So when they go out there and they're looking for oil, they're like, you can just have our oil. Sure, why not? Later on, they're like, oh, you took our oil, right? And now they're feeling like, you dirty rats, you shafted us, okay? So now these American companies come in and buy the rights to drill oil on their land, and then you get, this group of oil-producing countries in the Middle East, right? And now they coalesce, come together, and they're not our friends anymore. So we go, well, we should probably drill in America. And all these environmentalists go, what? You're going to hurt the environment. Okay, so we'll keep getting it from those people across the globe who hate us, because we're not going to stop getting it. Anyway, great book, okay? So, a couple books. This one, Gulag, The Prize. Watch it on the, if you want extra credit, you could watch it and give me an assessment of what you thought. Give you some extra credit on The Prize. There's one third one I'll give you called, I'm going to give you two more actually. One is called The Commanding Heights. I'd write that down, The Commanding Heights. It's not a book, but it's a video series, and it talks about basically who controls the production means of society, of business, the production means. So for example, if you're in the desk building industry, you see all these desks in here, right? Who controls the trees that you're going to use or the materials, the steel and the trees, the mineral rights? Who's going to control all that so that they could set prices, right? Because if they set the price of wood, they set the prices of desks. They set the price of material. That all comes down to the free market economy, okay? Do private industries own these, or does the government own them? And if the government owns them, how do they fix prices? Does the government determine what prices are, or does demand? Okay, again, this is like a 10-part series, and it is excellent. Again, you watch this in The Prize, I can guarantee you will come out highly educated about the world in economics compared to what you were, okay? And geopolitical discussions about what they talk about. Did you catch that? If you want to be smarter, watch these. Are they biased? Of course everything's biased. It might be more subtle, okay? It's not as openly biased as I am. But, come on. Everything is biased. Anybody who tells you they're not biased, they're either dumb, or because they don't know that they're biased, or they're lying to you. Okay? But we're all biased. Every one of us knows where we're coming from. All right. Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell. Write their names down. Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell. Go to YouTube. You don't need to read them, although they are prolific writers. Thomas Sowell's 90 or 91, and he's written more books than most of you will ever read in your life. He was a student of Milton Friedman's at the University of Chicago. He was a Marxist at the time. He became a capitalist, not because he was convinced by the theory, but because he worked in government and realized government can do nothing efficiently. Government is wasteful by nature, and Marxism puts everything in the hands of government. Therefore, everything would be wasteful by nature because it was in the hands of government. that's when his Marxism was abandoned, okay? And he took on Milton Friedman's views, but it was after the fact, okay? Two of my intellectual heroes when it comes to the economy, Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell. Watch their videos. Anything you watch and report back to me on, I'll start giving you some extra credit on those things, okay? Now, these guys will give you a perspective on things from which to look, okay? So when you judge politics about the economy, you watch these guys and you go, I like their theories or I don't like their theories, okay? But you know their theories. That's the thing. You've got to know their theories. And these guys are so well spoken that you'll understand their theories. They're not out there in space where you're going, I don't get this. Okay? So you need to understand, if you watch, for example, the Commanding Heights, you watch YouTube videos or read Thomas Sowell, you're going to get both Marxism and you're going to get the contrasting view. You read the Communist Manifesto, that's straight from Marx's lips, Marx and Engels, okay? Their pens. You'll know their view, okay? You familiarize yourself with, and by the way, Anna Applebaum is no friend of mine politically, okay? I mean, she's on the other side of the aisle when it comes to politics. She wouldn't have won a Pulitzer Prize if she were on my side, I can tell you that. But great book, and discusses what went on. So those are some resources I think you guys would benefit from, and if you take them in, you'll go, wow, I have a lot to think about now and a lot to use when I discuss other issues. Once you start talking about these things with your parents and your friends about who, not that you would vote my way or whatever, but that you would be informed when you do vote on such issues. You wouldn't have such a knee-jerk reaction to certain issues such as oil and gas, and because you'd realize there's a history to that. You wouldn't be like, oh yeah, let's all jump on the bandwagon for this, because you know there may be some repercussions, okay? So you'd be more thoughtful. Now, getting to be more thoughtful, we were talking about the presidency last time, and so the presidency discusses all these things. That's why I bring these things up, because right now we ask the question, what kind of president do we want? We were talking last time, do we want a powerful president or do we want a weak president? And I think we came to the conclusion that if the president's in power, our president's in power, the guy we want him to be more powerful, obviously, because we want our stuff done, right? And so we'll always justify his presidential overreach, Well, that's okay, because what he did was good, And then you go, well, it may be good for what you want, but it may be bad for the presidency overall, because you don't want to turn your president into an all-powerful tyrant, right? Because what happens when you put too much power in the hands of one individual? Is any man besides Jesus, morally perfect, righteous, sinless, blameless? No. And so eventually the sinfulness of man will come out in our politics and how we use our power. We will, power corrupts, right? You give too much power to anybody, they become corrupted. You don't want that. In a way, sometimes it's better to be hungry and poor, because you'll be a better person. Give them too much power, we tend to abuse it. So, of course, we don't want a weak, feckless president, do we? After all, the guy's got to, execute the laws. He's the, leader of the free world. He's, commander-in-chief of the military. That means he's in charge of defending us from enemies, foreign and domestic, correct? You want to be, unless you're considered a domestic enemy. You don't want that, do you? No. Yeah, you don't want him turning on you. All right. So we were talking about the powers of the presidency the other day. One of the powers is the check on Congress. right? How does the presidency check the powers of the Congress?
By vetoing?
Yeah, he could veto, or she could veto if we ever have one. My prediction, Kamala Harris will be our first female president. That's my prediction. I don't believe she'll be elected, but I believe she'll be the first. I'm not saying anybody's getting assassinated. I'm just saying somebody might be removed. That's my prediction. I'm in agreement with several people.
Dude.
Is that bad?
No, wait, just don't say.
Don't say it on
I think
video?
I think I had a problem with the assassination part.
No. I don't believe you'll be assassinated. I believe you may step down and be removed for, cognitive decline. A lot of people believe that about Ronald Reagan, by the way. May be true with Joe Biden. But, to be determined. So, certainly the president can veto bills. That's one thing. What happens if it becomes law, though? And, the veto's overridden, right? You can't, let's say try to veto the bill, but they got it through, right? And they overrode the veto, and so it becomes law, and he doesn't like it. What can he do? Is there anything he can do?
After
Once it's a law, what happens? What does the name of the executive branch suggest? He executes the law. And you can fail to execute the law. So if there are laws on the books, specifically, let's take what border issues with immigration. You say it's illegal to cross the border, right? You can simply ignore, tell your agencies to simply ignore the enforcement of certain laws or certain aspects of the law. And thus you could kind of get around it. So there's some power there. Because what is Congress going to do? Are they going to go enforce the law? No. Or you think the judges are going to step down from their, bench and take their robe off and get their gun and their badge, which they have at least, maybe have a gun but no badge, right? You think they're going to go down there and say, halt in the name of the Constitution or what? No. So, federal law, is executed by the federal executive branch. And it's either executed or not. Resources are allocated or they're not. You make that choice. They execute it. So Congress will raise the funds. The executive branch will spend them. Or not. So there's power there. But that's power in what not to do. But what about power in what to do? What happens when Congress fails to act? Then let's go the other way. Let's say Congress, in the one sense, Congress says, we passed a law, you didn't like it, so you failed to execute it. What if the president wants a law and he doesn't get what he wants? Now there's another way to do this. And it has become, I don't want to say increasingly popular. Roosevelt, FDR, issued, I have a number here somewhere, a lot in the thousands, maybe not the thousands, but at least 1,000 of these executive orders. Have you been watching the news? Who's been watching the news lately? Kind of.
Yeah.
It was in the thousands. 3,728 executive orders between 1933 and 1945. That's quite a lot of executive orders, okay? That's his own, hey, you're going to do this, and I don't have Congress. What do you watch?
Just like my local news.
Local news. Have you heard anything about the executive orders? Nothing, okay. No, okay. Well, it's Houston. Talking about Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And who's going to complain? Most of the time, depends on the news you watch. whether or not you're going to hear these things, because obviously, if you don't like the executive orders, that's newsworthy. Oh my God, did you hear about the new executive order that he put out today, Biden? And you're like, no, which one? Well, it's important because I don't like it, right? If you don't care, find your guy. If you don't care, probably not a big deal. What news do you watch? If you don't mind, do you watch local or national, or both?
I watch both. I've been watching more local lately.
Local's interesting because all politics is local, right? It's happening down the street from you.
Yeah.
You have more power. If you watch, you're more than likely going to hear the executive orders if you are watching world news, world or national news. Okay. You're watching CNN, Fox, MSNBC, One American News Network, Newsmax. Give me another one. When I was a kid, the only cable news network was CNN. Okay, cable news network, 24 hours. They created it. Fox came on as a response to them. Do you watch any news?
No.
It's like an adult soap opera. You ever watch soap operas? You do? Start watching the news. They're better than soap operas because they're real. Okay, and I mean there's spies. There's even
Action.
sex. Like Eric Swalwell, one of our guys on the Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, was caught with a honeypot. A honeypot is a spy that sleeps with her mark, and so he's on the Intelligence Committee, and he's been sleeping with this Chinese spy, and so you go, should he be on this committee? Well, Nancy Pelosi, she says yes. The Republicans are like, what are you talking about? The guy's a total mark. He's been, probably given up, and so it's. It is. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm saying. If you watch soap operas, skip them. Just start watching the news, okay? And then if you get sick of that soap opera, switch channels. Go from Fox News, or not Fox anymore. Go to Newsmax, and they go from Newsmax to MSNBC, and it's like a total different soap opera, except where it's like, who knows this? Have you guys heard of the show Wicked?
Yeah.
So Wicked is the other side of the Wizard of Oz, where the witch was really the good guy, right? You know how they flip sides?
Yeah.
That's what it's like. You go from MSNBC, which is the Republicans are evil, vile, the devil. And then if you go over to Fox or to One American News, it's the Democrats. They're the evil ones. So you depending on who you want the villain to be, you just, choose your news, okay? But it's a soap opera. Well, anyway, if you're watching those, you're going to get a sense for these executive orders. Now, these are directives from the president. Do they carry the weight of law? Kind of. They're generally directives over the agencies, okay, within the federal government, and how they'll be enforced. Now, is there a mask mandate? Yeah. Is that an executive order? I think so. Can you be put in jail? Well, some people have been, and that's a weird thing about it. But why are they put in jail? Are they put in jail because they broke a law, or because they are in contempt of an executive order or contempt of court? That's what I want to know. How is it enforced? Right? But Ted Cruz stated this. If you live, now by the way, this is coming out of Ted Cruz. Who's Ted Cruz?
They represent the senator.
He's a senator from where?
Texas.
Texas. Did the rest of my Texas class know this?
Yes.
Please say yes. Okay. He said at the end of Barack Obama's presidency, he was talking about Barack Obama making all these executive orders. He says, well, if you live by the pen, executive orders, then you will die by the pen, meaning any executive order that has been issued by a president can be gotten rid of by executive order by the next president. Okay? See, you don't have to get this passed through law, which you don't have to get all 435 members of Congress, right? You don't have to get the Senate. You don't have to get the president to sign it. Just with a stroke of a pen. I gave you the example of a deal made by John Kerry having to do with Iran. So the day Trump got in office, he got rid of the deal. Done, it's over.
No, but I think Biden did the same to.
That's where we're going with this. So Trump has some executive orders himself. Now, of course, why did Trump have executive orders? Well, because as soon as Trump lost the House, he no longer had the ability to he could suggest as much legislation as he wants. But what is the House, who has the majority of which is the Democrats? What are they going to do?
I mean, they vote against it.
Yeah, they're just like, right, all right, sure, right. And they're not going to pass anything. They know he's going to veto it, right? And at that time, they didn't even have the Senate, so they knew they weren't going to get it through the Senate. So you had this stalemate where you had no legislative action. The only kind of legislation that's going to get passed, which some was passed, and some really good legislation, it's usually pretty good legislation if you get this kind of divide, an unpopular president with the House, and the House, and they're not, and if they could come together, there's agreement. That's a good thing. You usually know it's a pretty well agreed upon thing. The USMCA, which was the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement, was a new treaty trade deal between the three North American countries, and that seemed to work out for at least for America. And so the House came together on it. That was nice. It was good. Reluctantly, they didn't want to give him the win. Go ahead.
So if the president gives an executive order, is there a way the Congress can, go
Yes.
to cancel it or something?
Yeah, they can pass a law. And we can veto that law, but again, they have to override the veto. But Congress has that power. See, a lot of this has to do with the division of powers. And the presidency has to do, whether you're Republican or Democrat, the Republicans and the Democratic presidents are on one side, whereas the Republican and Democratic senators and congressmen are on another side. They're in two different branches of government. They've got to defend their territory. So in a sense, the Republicans and the Democrats are on the same side in the presidency because they got to defend the power of the presidency, right? And the Senate has to defend the power of the Senate, and the Congress has to defend the power of because if you start giving your guy more power, then you've gotten rid of your own. If Congress starts giving away all its power to their favorite president, eventually their favorite president's not going to be in office, and they're not going to have the power to stop their political enemy anymore if they keep giving their power away. If that makes sense. Does that make sense to you? So there's a defense of the territory in the division of government. So the presidency is that way too. And so, yes, they can, and yes, they do. And so it's in Congress's best interest to, even if your guy is overreaching and it's what you want, it's in your best interest to say, hold on there. Stop it. I know I want this, but we got to do it right, because if we don't, the next guy's going to come in, he's going to do what we don't like, and we're not going to be able to stop him because we allowed this kind of overreach here. Okay? There are several landmark moments in American history that came about through these things, though, and I think some of these you're going to agree with, and some of them you're going to be like, oh, okay, interesting. All right? Let's see. First of all, where does it come from? Well, there are implied powers and expressed powers of Congress, and there's implied powers and expressed powers of the presidency. All right? The constitutional basis for the executive order is the president's broad power to issue executive directives. According to the Congressional Research Service, there is no direct definition of executive order, so it's implied. All right? Article 2 of the Constitution vests executive powers in the president, makes him the commander-in-chief. You need to command stuff, be able to issue commands if you are that commander-in-chief. Requires the president, quote, shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Thus, how those get executed is up to him, and orders can be made in order to do so. It's kind of like how does Congress get through its own enumerated powers? Well, there are implicit powers to do that. They have the right to make the rules in order to do that. Now, as you just said, Congress can pass a new law to override an executive order, but that is subject to a presidential veto, which needs to be overridden. All right, here's a good test question. Has every single president issued executive orders?
I mean, from the one.
That's a guess. I mean, you guys,
I mean, yes.
you say yes, your guess is yes.
Yes.
And you guess no. I mean, I'd say, well, why do you believe? Well, because you're just guessing, right?
Mhm.
If you asked me before I started reading, I would have said, I don't know, and I would have guessed. The answer is yes. Yes, every president has issued executive orders. Some executive orders are obviously going to be more or less mundane. Some are going to be like, okay, I get it. All right, we'll go with that. Others are going to be like, oh, no, you didn't kind of things, right? I can't believe he did that, right? So we could talk about some of these. Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus during the Civil War. Now, by the way, this Supreme Court Justice Taney, or Taney, it's T-A-N-E-Y, Taney, I'd say, because there's not two N's, but he ruled that his executive order was not constitutional. So what did he do? He ignored it. And Congress did nothing. So even though it was found unconstitutional by the court, he just said, well, I don't care. Okay? Now, how did he justify it? Well, he suspended the writ of habeas corpus because it was in the case of what he considered to be open rebellion. That you could suspend the writ of habeas corpus, the body of evidence, right, in cases of rebellion. So you got a bunch of people out there rebelling. You don't need to go out and, get a bunch of... You got to tamp down that rebellion, so you do what's necessary to do it, right? What was this rebellion of which we speak?
Civil War.
Civil War, right? The southern states decide we're leaving. We're taking our ball. We're going home, right? We're no longer a part of the Union. We are no part of these United States. We are now the Confederate States. Another one he did was the Emancipation Proclamation. What is the Emancipation Proclamation? What does it mean to emancipate something?
To remove.
To free. To free. He proclaimed freedom to whom? The slaves. Okay? And he did so again via, executive order. And he justified it through this idea of the rebellion, okay? Now, the concern was, well, what happens at the end of the war? Does that mean that they all go back to being slaves? Well, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which was brought about by the Congress, made sure that did not happen, okay? During World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued internment camps, concentration camps. We call them internment camps. During World War II, and put a certain race of people in these camps. What race were they?
Japanese.
Yes, Japanese. That would be nationality.
Or
But actually, technically,
Japanese American.
it's funny, the race is Asian, right?
Yeah, but I feel like the mostly I've heard people call it Japanese, but I didn't really, because I've heard older people say it was more other,
It was of Japanese origin, and the reason why was it that we needed the people of Japanese origin to be in internment camps? Well, because we had just been bombed. We were worried that we had spies amongst us, right? And it's easy, when if all Japanese spies are Japanese, it's kind of like we take out all the Japanese, then I guess we'll take out all the Japanese spies. Now, so he did so for how long? Until I don't even know how long they lasted, but it was not, Many of the Japanese people understood it. Many of them were probably like, this kind of stinks. But then we also had many Japanese people who joined the military, defended our nation against the Japanese and against the Germans and, you know, different theaters of war. But they did that through executive orders. Now, point of this isn't to judge that executive order, but just to show that those are pretty controversial executive orders, but they are carried out, and, you know, and these guys all, well, they're like, you have an executive order to show up for, you know, an internment camp, okay? Because, you know, for the protection of our nation. What if Joe Biden said, we are going to do a gun buyback policy, okay? And everybody now is required to turn in their AR-15 or any semi-automatic weapon that you have. How well would that go over? Yeah, I think Americans, especially Texans, are attached to their guns, okay? Southerners, yeah. No, look, I know, like in California and in Chicago, New York, it's probably pretty hard to own a gun legally, but I can promise you there are plenty of guns out there illegally, okay? Lots of people have them. So will people turn in their guns if an executive order is given? How are executive orders enforced? Well, he can execute it, I suppose, since he is the executive branch. But then there are people in the executive branch, such as sheriffs and stuff, who say, well, we're just going to make our county a, sanctuary county. Or you've heard the term sanctuary city, right? But there's sanctuary counties you hear about gun laws where they're like, we're not gonna do that. So it's very interesting who decides what and, you know, how enforcement works. But yeah, it's possible. Let's see here. Let's see if we can find another good one. Jackson and the president's power were at their height. This is Robert Jackson, Justice Robert Jackson, right? And when he's talking about the executive overreach of powers, right? He said the president's powers were at their height when he had to direct employed authorization from Congress to act at their middle ground, the zone of twilight, as he put it, when it was unsure which branch could act. So sometimes you go, well, we don't know who's going to act. Is it Congress's role or is it the president? Well, I'll do it, okay? And their lowest ebb, you know, the height and, you know, the space in between, right? The gray area. So, anyway, the use of executive orders also played a role in the civil rights movement. So there are some key issues, you know, slavery, times of war and rebellion, that these things are going to emerge. There's certainly, you can imagine, they weren't popular with Abraham Lincoln, right? Obviously, half the country's leaving. So Lincoln's clearly not a popular president. You know, if you think George Bush or Donald Trump was not popular, Abraham Lincoln, history has been kind to him, but his opposition certainly was not, okay? But you can see where they at their most important points, emerge, the types of things, you know. So, let's see. Played a key role in the civil rights movement in 1957. President Dwight Eisenhower used an executive order to put the Arkansas National Guard under federal control and to enforce desegregation in Little Rock. Affirmative action and equal employment opportunity actions were also taken by President Kennedy and Johnson using executive orders. Roosevelt gave the most, as I'd already stated, with 3,728 between 33 and 45. And that was, the key to that is while the country was in the Great Depression. Okay, so with great disaster probably comes more action. I won't say great action, that's a qualitative statement. Okay, more presidential action will be taken during times like that. Okay, President Truman gave 896. Obama, yeah, we think that he used a lot. 277. I know. Obama famously said, if Congress doesn't act, I've got my pen and my phone. And so we're like, oh, he must be issuing those things all over the place, you know? 277. His predecessor, Bush, 291. They both had 2 terms. Bush was a wartime, they were both technically a wartime president. But Bush had, you know, the Twin Towers, you know, attacked, had to go to war with Iraq. Didn't have to, but talked Congress into it thanks to Colin Powell and our CIA that probably got it wrong. And I was on the wrong side of it this time, you know, and I was so passionate. I'm like, don't you see the missiles? They're showing pictures of what they thought were missiles in Baghdad and all this stuff. I'm like, Colin Powell, don't you believe it, guys? And only one person, I can't remember who it was, probably Bernie Sanders for all I know, voted against going to war with Iraq. And we went 96, you know, it totally just took them over pretty quickly. But and then later on they're like, where's the WMD? Weapons of mass destruction. They couldn't find any. And I'm like, oh man. So we had a bunch of egg on our face. And they're like, it was a failure of our intelligence community. And I think the intelligence community got their heads above their skis. They wanted to go to war more than they wanted the justification for it. And it's probably just because what happens when somebody puts 2 planes, 3 planes, you know, 2 planes into your buildings of your own planes and 1 into your Pentagon, what do you want to happen? You want revenge. I think that might have been the motive. And I think I got caught up in that myself. But, you know, anyway, George W. Bush, that was his time, and he actually didn't get criticized as much, at least from the sources I watched, as Obama did, and he had less. Bill Clinton had 364, and so what's going on now with the current president, Joe Biden, guy who trips upstairs, not downstairs. He falls upstairs. He didn't fall down. Well, let's see some of these, okay? Trump got us out of the World Health Organization. Okay, we withdrew from the World Health Organization because Trump didn't trust them, because they're allegedly in bed with China. China's the originator of the first are communists and masters of misdirection and misinformation. 2, they're the originators of the COVID virus, and they've been not so forthcoming with it. And so Trump said, we're spending all this money on you guys and you're lying to us, so we're out of here. Well, Biden says, yeah, tell us more. He's re-engaging with them. He created a position of COVID-19 response coordinator. He rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, if you're into, you know, I'm a climate denier. I believe there's climate change. I just don't believe humans are doing it, okay? But we got out of the Paris Accord because America was spending all this money, and China wasn't held to the same account because they're considered an emerging market, and all these other gross polluters are out there. Just India, who has over 1 billion people, China has over 1 billion people. They don't have the emission standards America has, and we're expected to get rid of our net pollution, right, by a certain year, spend all this money doing so, plus give all this money to the Paris Climate Accord to try to change the weather, okay? And China, who's doing far greater damage, and India, and all these other countries that are doing all this other, and they give us the middle finger. They say, if you expect us to stop using this stuff, you're crazy, because you guys are already wealthy. You can do it. We can't, okay? And that's legit. I can understand it. And so we're like, okay, we'll let you slide on this one. No, you know, Trump's like, no, we're not going to spend all this money. So he pulls out the Paris Climate Accord. Politically, Biden comes in office and says, nope, we're back in, okay? So we're spending more money back there. Okay, so we spend all this money. So that's unpopular to people like me. Revoked the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. Okay, what that was was a pipeline that went all the way from Canada, all throughout America, down into Texas. And that means Canadian oil and gas and all that stuff can get from there to us without having to do what? Put it in trucks and drive it down. Okay? Now, why do people not want, well, there are two reasons why people don't want this pipeline. One, they don't want the pipeline because they believe oil in general is bad. Oil bad, the pipeline uses oil, therefore we need to get rid of it. Two, they say, well, the pipeline could break, there could be problems, and then there could be spills, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what, folks? That could happen any day you're driving oil down on a highway. An oil truck can get, it's far safer, okay? That's my statement on that. The safety's moot, they just don't want the oil. So following the energy, the whole debate over climate change and all that, oil bad, he issued an executive order killing the pipeline, which, by the way, also subsequently killed, or instantly, not even subsequently, instantly killed tens of thousands of jobs because people worked on it in Canada, all the way down throughout America, worked on this pipeline. He also paused the energy leasing in the Alaska National Wildlife Reserve. Again, what does that do? That takes us, so right there, that changes our foreign policy. Why? Because now we have to cozy up to places to buy fuel, oil, right? We can't get it from, it's cutting down the ability to get energy from our own nation. We're not energy independent, as they would say. So these are right away, these first four are pretty serious. Ask agencies to extend eviction foreclosure moratoriums. That had to do with COVID. People didn't have a job when you were not allowed to work, when they shut down and you were not allowed to go to restaurants to go to work. You had no ability to make money. When you have no ability to make money, you have no ability to do what?
Pay rent.
Pay rent. When you own a building, when you've got a mortgage from a bank and you are renting out apartments, okay, and your renters are not bringing in money, how do you pay your mortgage to pay for that building that they're renting those spaces from you? You can't. So banks can't get rid of you either, right? So there's foreclosures and evictions going on. Education department to extend student loan pause. Now this is interesting for those of you taking out student loans, because as you take out these loans, they accrue what? Interest. Anybody taking out a loan here?
Student loans, maybe.
You are? That's what I'm talking about. Taking out student loans,
Yeah.
they accrue what did I just say? Bite your money. Interest. So that interest stops. That's a good thing, right? So if you can't pay it, it's not just accruing interest. But the smart thing is, if you can pay it, do pay it. Because that means you're getting your principal down. And that's less interest you'll pay overall. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right, so he did that. But that affects banks too, because banks are in the business of what? Making money. How do they make money? By loaning you money and charging you interest. So this does have an effect. All these do affect other things. It's not just, we're going to keep you from having to pay your mortgage. Well, wait a minute. What about the people that make money off of you paying their mortgage? How are they going to pay the bank employees? Launch initiative to advance racial equity, End 1776 Commission. That's a big deal. That has to do with education, about how we educate people. Do we educate people and tell people that America's a bad country? It was founded on racism, by racists, about racism, about slavery, to enact slavery, to keep slavery, to keep everybody but the white man down. The 1776 project was started by a black man, and his idea was to talk about how good America is, how America ended slavery, how America has gotten rid of oppression, how we fought to become a better nation. But that goes against the narrative that America is a bad nation, that hates women, that hates minorities, that hates anybody but white men. If you're a white man, you're on top. And we need to make sure that the white man goes down, okay? That's kind of There are two projects, okay? I think it's the 1612 project and the 1776 project. The 1612 project says that's when America was founded by, that's when invaded by, all these colonists, right? You're in agreement with that, right? We're a bunch of bad people. Well, you're sitting there with a Java City coffee cup in your hand, with a custom bag, with an custom HBU shirt that you did not weave yourself, from a sheep you did not shear yourself, that you didn't raise yourself, right? You're in a building that was donated by a multi-millionaire white man so he could teach you, okay? Because he cared about you. So we all sit on the shoulders of people who really did a lot of work, and we live better than anybody in the history of mankind has lived. Okay? We live better than the kings of old. Our impoverished, walk around with cell phones, with rights that cops can't just go take you to jail for nothing. Can't kill you like the samurai did for looking at you wrong. Stuff like that. That women get a vote. You're not property. You own property, but you are not property. Okay? Competing visions, and he wants, Joe Biden, by executive order, got rid of this idea that he wants to end the 1776 project, teaching about America's greatness, America's successes rather than America's failures. Where are you from again?
Guam.
Well, why did you come here?
My dad's in the military.
Why would your dad, what branch of the military was your dad in? Army. Why would your dad defend such a nation that's so bad?
Oh, God.
Now, I'm picking on her, not because she said anything that I believe, but that's the way it goes. Why would anybody defend a nation that's so evil? Are we an evil nation? We are? We're evil? Is there a better nation than, who taught you this? No, somebody taught you it. You got 5 minutes to convince me America's an evil nation.
No, I'm not saying it is. But
You're just not denying it.
No, I mean, but no place is exactly perfect.
Well, you don't have to be perfect. Are you perfect?
No, but I'm just
Are you
saying,
evil?
I'm just saying we all have our faults in this country. We're not exactly
Yes, America has
perfect.
its faults, but I didn't make that claim, did I?
No, but it's not bad. to
Do our faults outweigh our virtues?
No. You
say no?
I mean,
Name a better country. Just name one. I'm not going to invite you to go there. I'm just going to say I'll go there.
oh, God.
What name of it why did you come here, sir? You're not from America.
No, man.
Why did you come here? And not like you're not. Well, you're welcome. I love you here.
Well, basically, I believe, looking for a better life.
He's looking for a better life. If America's so bad, and you're black, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying.
Hold on here. You're not, but others are. Why would you come to such a racist nation?
Okay.
Well, it is racist, but that
Is it? Did you have to walk down the street looking over your shoulder?
I didn't, but the people doing it.
You're thinking about doing it?
No, there are people doing that.
Are they?
I mean, at least the news cover that.
That's what the news says. I worked in the news. I used to make up those stories. Literally. I did. But you're not really worried, are you?
No.
You think you're pretty safe here?
I'm good.
Okay, good. And you're a woman. And you're Hispanic, right? Have you been jumped by anybody wearing a MAGA hat, saying this is MAGA country? No. How about you? You're Guamanian, right? Anything?
Well,
Gangs of white people
Ow.
can't walk down the street.
at stores. I
We
had-
hang out at stores, us white people.
No, well, I had like an incident at a store one
Tell
time.
me what happened to this store.
Like they basically started telling me that I should like not be speaking Spanish. I was
Who
telling
told
them-
you that?
I was like an old white lady.
Oh, those old white ladies.
Yeah.
Did she tell you to not speak Spanish because she didn't understand it?
No, she just told me that I should speak English because I'm not in Mexico, basically.
What?
Yeah, you're not in Europe. But that's.
Mm.
Yeah, you're right. Let's all leave this country. That lady can have it.
That's what it's not perfect, but at the same time, I feel like it's better than some other countries.
Some, but not all. Figure it out. That's your homework. Figure out the best place on Earth to live.
Oh, God.
Mars.
Mars is not on Earth.
Okay.
Mars is not on Earth. I say this only because I do believe America is great in some ways, but I have my complaints.
Yeah, we do, though.
Brazil, the abortion's illegal. Not Brazil, Chile. I think that aspect is much better than America. They value life more than Americans value life. Okay?
Well, Canada ranks number one.
Canada ranks number one in abortion.
No, like the best place to live.
Not if you're in the womb. They're the leader, one of the leaders in abortion. So that's what I'm saying. I said it depends on what we're talking about.
Depends on the-
You see what I'm saying? If you're in the womb, you better be in Chile. Your best bet's to be in Chile if you want to get out alive. Okay? Okay, so if you're in New York City, you better watch out. Okay, because they have a very high rate of this stuff. So I'll agree with you. We have our shortcomings, and that's why we fight over this politically. Obviously, we don't fight because we think we want to make America worse. We want to fight because what? We want to make America better. Go to Venezuela. Can you wage that battle?
No.
You have no power. So you want to be in a place where you have the liberty to speak, to vote, right? And you do have that, correct? Yes, you can speak in my class, and you're not, you can speak out there, and you hold a sign on the road. People may think you're stupid or crazy, but you have a right to do it. Make sense? Okay. Beware, I'm going to start dropping some quiz bombs on you to catch you up on the quizzes, okay? There'll be, quote, a midterm, just a big test, probably of all the things you've already learned, okay? So don't worry about that. Worry about it enough to study for it and get to know it, okay? And think about extra credit if you want. Ask me for the resources again if you want, okay? All right, have a great day. I'll look forward to seeing you on...
Thursday.
Thank you.